Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Mental Breakdown Podcast, where it is easy to listen, that's easy to function. You'll find me here at Valencia College. You know your host is a busy lady. However, I could not miss this episode because it is a very special discussion that we're having this evening. And that topic itself will be about dress codes. And I followed the one and the only Miss Imani Blair, and I saw that in one of her videos. I believe it was a script, or she was inspired by the content that Miss Leora has posted on her Instagram. So
Hey, you're on mute. You've muted yourself, Shay. You're on mute, Shay.
ah, okay, can you hear me?
Now I can.
Okay, good. Did you miss like that last part?
I missed, yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, what I meant to say was that Miss Imani Blair, I viewed one of her videos on Instagram, and I believe that she was either inspired or viewed your content. And I was like, well, let's get to the source here. It's you. And so I wanted to get in contact with you to discuss this topic being transphobic and sexist and racist dress codes. So let's get into it. I have a few questions here. Um, and I believe we can start with I believe, let's see. Hmm. Okay. Let's start with the solution. So, what do you think is the ideal dress code for school?
So, first of all, Shay, thank you so much for inviting me onto your amazing podcast. I'm really honored to be here. So, I'm all about fairness and being non gendered. So, the ideal dress code, I can't answer the question the way you want me to answer the question. I can't tell you the ideal dress code would have this bullet point and this bullet point, and this is permitted and that's not permitted, because the answer is the school should be inviting the students into conversation, and the students and the school should be having a series of conversations to talk about what their philosophy is about their dress code. And at the end of the process, they should collectively decide what their school dress code will be. So I can't tell you precisely it should look exactly a specific way. But what I will tell you is there should not be any language that is gendered, and there should not be any language that reveals unconscious biases against any groups. And to start off our conversation, let's talk about words like distracting. The word distracting is a problem and has no business being in a school dress code.
Yes. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, hello. So, let's see. Exit total layout. Yes. All right. So, another question that I had here, actually, to go off on a few of the points that she mentioned. One being not to have dress codes that are gendered. That's especially, I know, an issue at our school where, for one, they refuse to identify or recognize, pardon me, how a lot of students. So that's like the source of a lot of the issues between students and the admin. So definitely agree with you on that point. Another question that I had here is what clothing is inappropriate for school? And then do these dress codes really help keep students focused on academics? Because that seems to be the main argument that these academic institutions have when it comes to any rebuttals that students have when it comes to dress codes.
Yeah, no, these are all great questions. If it's okay, I'm going to sort of go back a few steps and kind of broaden the conversation, and then I'm happy to answer the questions. But I feel like I can't really answer the questions until we talk about what is the rationale or motivation that school administrators have for instituting and enforcing these dress codes in the first place. And what many schools will say is that they need to have a dress code to instill respect, a community of respect and a respect for learning. And what they often will tell you if you press them on it is that, in their opinion, when students, meaning girls, uh, wear clothes that, according to the school, is sexually provocative or revealing, that is a distraction to other students. So I think we need to unpack all of that first before we get into sort of in a granular level, what dress codes should be or should not be. And I really want everybody listening to know that there is really no evidence, as far as social scientists have shown. And in terms of my own research, I've been tracking slut shaming for 25 years and dress coding for the last few years. Really, there is no evidence that what a person wears will influence whether or not they are sexually harassed or assaulted. And yet so many schools are saying that by wearing clothes that are a distraction, that could lead to sexual harassment and assault. So we need to nip that in the bud right away. And also, I want to point out that with an emphasis on distraction, that is a very kind of tricky thing, because the idea of people being distracted is rooted in the idea that other people matter more than the people who are being singled out because of their clothing. And so what that does is it elevates everybody else. And with a gender dress code, what that means actually is elevating boys, people who do not identify as girls. So anybody who doesn't identify as a girl, but we'll get to binaries in a minute, because that is very important as well. So I just want to set the stage and talk about, what's going on here. Dress codes may be drafted with good intentions. Shay, I have to tell you, I always assume good intentions unless I'm proven otherwise. And I do actually sincerely believe that many dress codes are rooted in good intentions, where school administrators genuinely believe that this is something that will be helpful to students and to learning. So I think it's our job to show them that they are incorrect and misguided and actually doing the opposite of what they think they're doing. And so I think that is a really good starting point, rather than starting off in a confrontational way, because that often doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've touched on one side of the dress codes, right? And not haven't even touched on binaries, but we've touched on, I believe, like the academic institution's perspective when it comes to dress code, the assumed correlations that they make between dress codes and sexual assault. But one thing that, or I would say another argument that they like to bring up. Okay. But yes, another argument that they like to bring up is that they don't want to infringe upon self-expression or anything of that sort, but that they just want to protect the students. So I'd like to focus a little bit in on that self-expression argument. So what was the question here? So simply put, do dress codes infringe on student self-expression?
Yes, yes, they do infringe on student self-expression. I'm interested more in fairness across gender. So I think that if a school decides to limit self-expression in a way that is not gendered and is not racialized, and no one group is singled out in any way, I actually would not have a problem with that, because as long as it is fair across different populations, I think that that's the school, as long as everybody's in agreement that that's what they want, I would be fine with that. I'm not against dress codes per se. I'm against unfair, gendered, racialized, transphobic dress codes, which is, a really specific and pervasive problem. I don't think anything goes. If somebody were to say, in order for me to express myself fully, I need to wear a bathing suit to school, I think it's totally fine and fair and reasonable for a school to say, no, you don't get to wear a bathing suit in the classroom. So the idea of self-expression, I think, can have limits. And that might not be the most popular opinion among some of your listeners. But I really do want to focus more on issues around discrimination and unconscious biases.
No, and that's totally okay, and I understand that, and that's somewhat why, I prefaced, not preface, but I kind of asked that one of the questions, at the beginning, which was or what pieces of clothing are considered inappropriate, because I think that's kind of goes hand in hand with what you were talking about when it comes to the limitations of self-expression.
I mean, I can get into specifics if you want. There are some common rules that are part of dress codes. I do want to just say, just to sort of set the, the basic parameters here. Actually, I have the statistic in front of me. So many public schools have dress codes. According to the most recent national data, I'm reading from a really great report, Dressed and Ready to Learn by Legal Momentum. So according to the most recent national data, 62% of public middle schools and 56% of public high schools enforce a strict gender dress code. So well over half. So just want to set the stage with that. In terms of specifics that I find problematic for all the reasons you and I have been talking about, one of them is what's called the fingertip rule. So for those of you listening who are not familiar with the fingertip rule, though I have a feeling many of you are, that is the rule that when you are standing up and you have your arms by your side going down your legs, if your fingertips fall on the side of your leg at a point that is higher than that is lower than the hem of your skirt or your shorts, then that would mean that your skirt and your shorts are too short and in violation of dress code. So that is a rule that I think really has no business being in any dress code. Another one is a rule against bra straps showing. Bra straps show all the time, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And that is a good example of a gendered, a particular gendered violation that, only somebody wearing a bra, obviously, that could apply to. Another one is a lot of schools say that it's prohibited to show your stomach or your midriff. This one's a little controversial. So I know that ideas about clothing change over time. We all know that. Things that, maybe a generation or two ago were considered very daring or troubling, for whatever reason, overly provocative. They may not be today. I think many of us will agree that showing your stomach or your midriff is an example. It's, in my opinion, not sexualized the way it may have been a generation or two ago. It's so common for women's fashion to wear crop tops and for part of one's stomach to be revealed, that to me, and to my mind, that is another example of part of a gender dress code that I find troubling.
And speaking of, okay, so we spoke about midriff, a few of the controversial, what would you call them? Like the, dress code checks that admin try to enforce, like the arms to the sides. What would you call? What's the official term?
Well, that's called the fingertip rule. I mean, that's what most schools call it, or that's what most students call that, the fingertip rule.
Okay, so you're talking about the controversial rules, and I know we're jumping over the place. I just have my questions written here below us. But when it comes to the opposite sex, like boys, well, really boys, period. What are your thoughts on the boys will be boys argument? And then do you think boys could be allies to this like anti-dress code cause, or at least altered dress code cause?
Yeah, those are two really good questions. So I'll address the boys will be boys one first, and then boys as allies second. So the expression "boys will be boys" basically means that boys and men cannot control themselves when they see a sexy woman. All right, again, very binary thinking. But let's just go with that for the moment. Let's assume a binary for the purposes of this, because it is presupposing the binary to begin with. So that is the idea that, yeah, a boy or a man can't control himself. He sees a woman, showing her bra strap or showing her midriff and violating the fingertip rule or what have you. And he is so distracted or sexually attracted or aroused that he wouldn't be able to control himself if he then harassed or assaulted her. That basically, that is in the nature of masculinity. And the corollary to that is that it is up to girls and women to dress in a certain way and to behave in a certain way to kind of check the way boys and men supposedly behave. And that we are supposed to be gatekeepers and modify the way we dress and modify our behavior so that boys and men don't behave like boys and men. So that way of thinking we know is so problematic. It is based in inaccuracies. It is based in biases against girls and women. And it's just not true. It's just inaccurate. And it does lead to slut shaming and the idea that if somebody is harassed or raped, that they invited it, that they provoked it, that it is their fault, and that they're not truly a victim. As to your second question, people of all genders can and are allies to struggles against school dress codes in many, many schools around the country. People who do not identify as female have been amazing about rising up and participating in different protests. Some of the protests have been very creative and interesting. Boys showing up to school wearing tight Speedo bathing suits, or boys in some schools showing up wearing short skirts. Yes, humor is a really great thing. I love humor, and that's great. It also is showing a really important point because by and large, these boys aren't getting in trouble when they show up showing some skin. It's always the girls who get in trouble for showing some skin. So it's not only a way to show solidarity and a way to say, hey, we're all in this together, but it also exposes the fact that there is this gendered unfairness. The last thing I want to say, Shay, in answering this question is I want to talk about what's called the sexual double standard, because that is what you and I are talking about. The sexual double standard means basically what it sounds like, that we have one standard for boys and men and another standard for girls and women. Again, very binary thinking. And the unfairness, of course, is that not everybody is treated the same way. So, we keep talking about binary thinking. So I want to pause and address that. One of the other problems, big problems with gender dress codes is the fact that anybody who wants to dress in a way that is part of their gender fluid identity, they too get called out the way girls get called out for being in violation of school dress code. And that includes boys who want to wear skirts, or in some cases, depending on whether or not hair is part of the dress code, boys who have long hair, or who wear nail polish, or anybody who wants to express themselves in a gender fluid way. Many, many schools are clamping down on them as well.
I know that to be true because even our school is starting to clamp down as well, especially with a new principal. It's just a completely new or harsher take, especially when it comes to how girls and women dress around the school. But all that to say, so let's see. Okay, so one question before our last question. It was just a question that came to mind as you were speak, what would be a word of advice you would give to our teens listening who are not, frankly, sure what they want to do or what they want to specialize in? Because, frankly, I didn't know that, like, slut shaming research, because you seem so well rounded, and it was like a thing. Like, I just thought dress codes was an issue, and you just do your research, you protest, you do your thing. But the fact that you're so like
Oh,
this is
Shay,
your
you're cutting.
specialization. So
Oh, I'm so sorry.
it's
You
astounding
were
and it's inspiring.
you were
Yep.
cutting out, Shay. I actually missed most of your question. I'm so sorry. Would you repeat it?
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Okay. Okay. Good. But yes, simply put, I won't blabber. Um, your specialization is slut shaming and dress codes, and that's awe-inspiring because that's something I don't think a lot of kids or adults really knew was something that you could do, a person could do. So, what word of advice would you give to teens? I'm being honest. What word of advice would you give to teens who are really not sure what they want to do or are not sure how to transform an, an interest into a specialization like you did?
Thank you for asking me that, Shay. Actually, I love that question and really appreciate that. So, I started doing this research just as a personal passion project when I was in my 20s. This was in the mid 1990s, and did not know that it was going to turn into, a 25 plus year research project that is continuing. Who knew? But when I started, the word slut shaming didn't exist. There was no language to talk about this. It was much more acceptable then than it is now to slut shame people. I know there are many public examples, of course, but I'll mention Monica Lewinsky because I know she's been in the news a lot recently. But it was considered perfectly socially and culturally acceptable to slut shame Monica Lewinsky. The Wall Street Journal called her a little tart in print. That was the dominant thinking back then, and I just decided that this was something I wanted to focus on. Again, didn't know it was going to turn into books, didn't know it was going to turn into a whole big thing. And look, and here I am. So my advice is, if you are passionate about something, you want to dig deeper, you want to find out what's going on with it, you want to talk to people and find out what their experiences and stories are, and learn more about this thing that is troubling you or exciting you, do it. When something excites you or troubles you as much as slut shaming affects me, then it becomes your life work in a way, whether you like it or not. It's like when you have to, right? So I would say to everybody out there, just do it. Just do it. Maybe you won't make money from it. That's okay. Learning about something that is important to you is important, and it's like the air we breathe. You have to do it in a way. It's like it's your calling. So and this has been my calling, and I feel very lucky that I've been able to do it.
And it's amazing to hear and to see you because and it's frankly timely because my anthropology teacher today is also my AP Lit teacher. But he said something really profound today that at first I was a little offended by, but then it was like, wait, no, he's being honest. But the topic was part of it was book banning, and then the importance of representation in literature. Um, but he was kind of playing the devil's advocate, so I think that's why I kind of took offense at the start. But he had said that he sometimes has some of his students come to him and they're like, Mr. Amador, this really like offended me. Some of the words that were mentioned there, that just really offended me. And he says, uh, simply put, like, he just doesn't care because, or he won't remove the literature from the book list because that are like our emotions shouldn't be the reason that that book is removed. And I was like, what? Like, that is the reason. But just hearing you speak, it's like, well, no, because the emotions that we have in react or that we experience in reaction to the literature that we read, are the same emotions that move us to further research that topic or the information that we read in the first place. And they just make us more well-rounded. So that was just a little connection I made. But yeah, so that's so just amazing what you're doing. I most definitely applaud you. And
I have a question for you.
yes, go ahead.
I want to know if I can do a shout out to your fans and listeners.
Yes.
I would love to hear from anybody who's in high school or college about whether or not they have ever felt distracted by a classmate because of what their classmate was wearing. Would love to hear from folks. They could email me or message me on Instagram, or whatever. If you have another suggestion of how to reach me, but I have been talking with boys and non-binary students specifically about this issue, and I'm just really interested to talk and hear what people think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can. That'll actually be the little, or probably the second trailer I'll make, just of you saying that, just to post it on the Instagram. But yes, I greatly appreciate you joining me this evening. And I believe those are all the, oh, no, take that down. Those are all the questions that I have.
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me, Shay. You're very cool. Love everything you're doing. And you're obviously following your passion, which is really inspiring. And I'm just enjoying watching everything you're doing and looking forward to seeing what you're going to do next.
Thank you so much. And I forgot because my mama here got my back. But she reminded me, for each of the guest speakers that we have on the podcast, I'd love to receive a drop from them because that'll be like the starting line for the trailer. So it's simply you introducing yourself and then saying you're listening to the Mental Breakdown podcast.
Do you want me to just do that right now?
Yes, please.
Hey, it's Leora Tanenbaum. I'm an expert on slut shaming and school dress codes, and you are listening to the Mental Breakdown podcast.
First time. Everybody takes like 3 times. I'm like, oh my gosh. But yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And you can look for everyone here, pardon me, I'm saying like you directly, but everyone can look for the 2 trailers from this interview on our Instagram at least by the end of the week or probably Saturday. But I'm aiming for this by the end of this week. And again, I thank you, Miss Leora, for joining me.
Have a great evening. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.